Good morning. Welcome to this gathering hosted by the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bowling Green. Whether you're here in person or online, we are so glad that you are here today on this beautiful autumn day in October. Just as a reminder, please set your cell phone to silent so that we can be fully present with one another. We are a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, however you identify, wherever you come from, and whoever you love, you are welcome here. Our Sunday services are different each week so that we can honor and learn from a wide array of traditions and beliefs. And today, our speaker is our very own Barbara Victoria. Though we each walk our own path here in this place, on the land of the Osage, the Cherokee, Shawnee, and the Yuchi, and now at this time, we journey together as one community. For Unitarian Universalists, the flaming chalice is a symbol of the light of learning and the love of our community. This morning, our chalice will be lit by Kevin Webster. As our congregation's chalice is lit, please light your own chalice at home if you have one, and join us in singing hymn 362, Rise Up, O Flame. Our opening reading will be given by Barbara.
The mothers of Hope House. Didn't we love them well? We sewed for our little girls play suits and dresses, pressing them tenderly with matching ribbons for their hair. We kissed them lightly behind the ear as we tucked them in. Good night, sweetheart, sweet dreams, with a favorite doll. And oh, how we adored our little boys. We soaked grass stains out of overalls and mended teddy bears, held them for their first haircut, sighing as we saved a curl, smiled as we sent a little man on his way with Daddy, our man, yes. We baked birthday cakes, inviting little friends to play, sang lullabies, rocked our babies, falling asleep ourselves, stuffed Christmas stockings in the wee hours, making sure that Santa had cookies, and brought the favorite tractor, kitchen set, candy canes for the tree. When all along it was dreams we were realizing, so they might learn to believe, to follow their own stars as we had dreamed for them, of graduations, good work, a partner, a wedding, a home, children of their own, a life. So we gather at Hope House on Monday evenings, weary mothers, sad, sometimes angry, tired, sharing the week we have lived, the latest step of our little ones, pot, crack, meth, alcohol, jail, prison, children they cannot raise, lives they cannot live, sometimes talking over one another like shell-shocked victims of war, a war we could not foresee, battles that are not ours, only the casualties, gathering in our arms, if we can, to go on loving them, trying to love ourselves.
Well, we are so glad that you have had the courage to enter here today. So we're going to sing a joyful song, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, number 361. Please rise if you're willing and able.
Your
We will now have a few moments for meditation, reflection, and prayer. The singing bowl will lead us into silence. After the silence, you're invited to join in the song Spirit of Life. The words will be on the screen. As mentioned earlier, Unitarian Universalists have a wide array of beliefs, and the speakers at our Sunday services come from many traditions. Here today to share her own thoughts is Barbara Victoria. Barbara is a layperson who has spent 20 plus years in the trenches with the addiction of a loved one, and there's no greater truth than that. So thank you, Barbara.
The reading was from the Mothers of Hope House, which was written in Cody, Wyoming in 2006, and I was there. It's been a minute. How many of you know of someone or of a family of an addict? Raise your hands. Okay, that's a lot of folks. It's been said that there are 5 people affected by every addict's behavior or the consequences of that behavior. I would say 25 is a conservative estimate at best. Friends, coworkers, church, family, neighbors next door, across the street, the checkout person at the grocery, people in the waiting room at your doctor's appointment, people on the bus, in airports, in hospitals. We are legion. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, and that horrible word for step people, which they are our loved ones every step of the way. I call them gifts. My story begins, and I'm going to reference my story because it will help show who we are, because we are not known out there, and we are very, very often solitary people in what we're doing. It begins with my 19-year-old's first DUI, which would eventually number 5. At that time, he had 8 accidents on the farm and off, with 5 being alcohol-related that we knew. I relayed this to him and his father and was met with dismissal. Oh, Barbara, Mom. Something in my gut told me that this was not just an isolated accident, and I would learn over the years to follow my gut always when I needed to. But there was more driving it that I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to do about it. If anything, all I knew was that I was alone in this awareness. And I would learn that addiction is a progressive disease. Now, okay, there's this lot of controversy over disease or choice, and that's understandable. Dr. Burns Brady, a physician who has served the Healing Place in Louisville, which I'm very familiar with, where my loved one actually ended up working after he completed the program. Dr. Brady has more than 30 years in recovering as an alcoholic. When I heard him say this, which was some years ago, in plain terms, he said heredity is the #1 cause of addiction. Wow, I hadn't heard that. This man's a doctor and has done it. Not every family with an addict in one generation will have addicts in the next. I'm not saying that, nor was he. But there's a propensity, a physicality that can be transmitted. There's a term for the chemical. Maybe someone here knows it. I couldn't find it. I wanted it for the presentation. But the bottom line is an alcoholic's physiology has no quitting sense of when to stop drinking. There is a chemical in the body that most people have, and it's a stop. But addicts, alcoholics don't have this. So, and the other thing he said that piggybacks on this dramatically, there is not an addict that he's ever known, and he's known a lot of them, and he is one, without this quality built into their personality. At some time in their life, they have a feeling of less than, or being inadequate, or not quite good enough, or some such inadequacy. With the first try of a substance, whether it's by accident or a friend or whatever, everything's great. The world is whole. They are the smartest, bravest, most capable person they know. Everything changes with that substance, and that's where the hook is. Dis-ease is of body, mind, and spirit when it comes to addiction. For my alcohol, it was, for my 19-year-old, it was alcohol. I believe his addiction started, though, maybe around age 10. It could have been. When I know he had a run-in with whiskey, when a babysitter was staying with him and not babysitter, but a sitter was staying with him and his sister. We lived in the old farmhouse. We were the third generation. Granddaddy always had whiskey in the pantry. You went from the kitchen to the pantry to get to the bathroom in the old house. So it was always there. When we moved in, it was always there. And as our kids were growing up, it was always there. I believe that's where he tried whiskey, and I believe he got it immediately. I believe it was game on the first time he tried it. His grandfather was known in the family to have a drinking problem. That's how it was termed. So a juice glass full of whiskey chased with a beer by 9 a.m., as was usual behavior for this man. He was my dear father-in-law. I loved him to death, but this was every day. Might have a good hit before lunch or before the afternoon nap, and certainly before supper. That was basic. I would learn when I attended family treatment years later with my son that it's not what a person drinks or how much that distinguishes alcoholism. It's why they drink and what it does to their behavior. So what's driving it? Who knows what's driving anyone to drink? But in my father-in-law's case, alcohol made his usual Southern gentlemanly way, and he was every bit that. He becomes sullen and critical and negative and sometimes mean. And that would progress until he was done with it and went to take a nap and get over it. He just went dark. And my son had the same behavior as a drinker. Choice does become a factor as the disease progresses, in that addiction leads to bad choices. to keep whatever habit going they have, whether it's alcohol or drug, substance abuse. Anything goes to keep it going. It just is the way it works. It's progressive. And it will take everything eventually. Home, family, cars, jobs, children, relationships, sometimes life itself. It will take it all, without exception. Addiction is an equal opportunity disease. It respects no person, position, religion, belief. If it gets you, it gets you. You've got it. So, okay, I'm a parent, and I reached that point, which we did in a few more years, that I think that was when, with the first incarceration. It's the shame that overwhelms parents, that awesomely. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? Where was the red flag? What do people know around me? What are they saying about this? I lived in a rural area. I lived on a farm and in Breckenridge County. And you have the morning news with the county news, and they always have what the court stuff is, and your son or daughter's name comes out. It's like, ooh, there it is. Or it's in the county paper. That's what papers do. They publish this stuff. So it's all out there. And with it, the guilt starts growing. What should I have done? Could I have done? Ought I have done? It goes on and on. The fact is, your baby, my boy, was history. So now it becomes, you don't know who your friends are anymore, who really has your back. Does anybody have your back in this? Because people very often regard this because it's a fearsome thing, with suspicion and just incredulity. And what can you say? So what you have to begin to do is to find people who get it, who are your tribe. You need new comrades. And these are people you find in Al-Anon groups and Nar-Anon groups. AA was started for alcoholics. The wife of the AA founder started Al-Anon for the women. And in the beginning it was the women. The wives were waiting for their husbands to finish the meeting. So then she decided, well, why don't we have a meeting? So they started Al-Anon. And out of that, Nar-Anon grew for friends, parents, loved ones of narcotics addicts. And this is where real help can be found for those of us who are dealing with this. You walk into a meeting the first time, and it's very scary. You wonder if you're going to have to talk. How weird are you compared to everybody else? It's just very unnerving, but you soon learn there's nothing new under the sun in that room. It's all confidential. No one is going to talk about you. And the fact is, there's no story in that room scarier than yours. They've heard it all and more. And welcome to your new fraternity that you didn't want to join. Well, but there's real support there. Real knockdown, drag out support. You learn the 3 C's, that we didn't cause it, we can't control it, and we can't cure it. And that's really hard for parents to accept, because we're wired to take care of our children, to look out for their well-being. Surely, and I've been years with this, I'm not sure I totally believe it yet, that there isn't some little thing back there that I missed or that it's still on my plate. But you just have to kind of let it be there if it's still there and not dwell on it. So I attended Al-Anon for about 6 years altogether, but it was within the first year I began to see things in the program that were about me, stuff I needed to work on, and then stuff that was about the addict that wasn't mine. And I began to put them down, jot them down, that's what I do. And I thought this might be a useful tool for other parents. And out of that I wrote this book. It's not about you, the first 6 chapters, except when it is. And it's not a how to do it right book, because everybody's right is what works for them. And it's all alien territory once you're in it. But there are some basic things I'm going to share because they tell you who we are. And one of the things I talk about in the book is, first of all, we have to focus on what we can do for ourselves, which is go get with people who get us, who understand. We can bypass social situations that look like they might be loaded. Like maybe you don't want to go to that wedding because there's umpteen relatives who are going to ask how your son or daughter is or whatever. You don't have to go. Or if you go and someone starts sharing the wonders of their son or daughter who just got accepted at the Air Force Academy or is going to Yale Law School, or all these wonderful things that we want or want to celebrate with each other, and you're thinking, my son just got put in jail, but I know where he is, and he's safe, and he has 3 squares. That's my good news. But I don't have to share that. If they ask me how my son is, I can say, he's working on some things, but he's moving along. We don't owe anybody anything. Sorry, folks, you're not going to get it out of us. We don't have to. That's a big deal for some of us. So this gets supported in these meetings very, very healthily. Another thing, right away, stop doing for our loved one addict what they can do for themselves. And this gets into the whole thing about enabling and codependency. We hear this codependency word, so like, ugh, really, here we go again. But in this world, it is a fox biting its own tail. It just keeps on going as long as somebody's doing something for somebody who is expecting something to be done for them, acting needy, whatever. We have to, the parent in this situation has to break that cycle. Don't pay the jail fee or the bail to get them out. Let them sit there. Or don't pay their parking ticket. Or don't call into work and say, Johnny's sick today, sorry about that, he'll hopes to be there tomorrow. Stop doing any of those things. And that's a big one. That can be very hard. But it's going to serve you better to do that first, and then them. You can sympathize with the predicament they're in. And this one friend of mine, her stock answer to her grandson was, well, I'm so sorry about that. What are you going to do about it? Put it on them. You don't have to say, well, I wish you'd straighten up your blah, blah, or quit doing such and such. Just say, what are you going to do about it? Wow, what a thought. Don't give them money. Quit giving them money. Give them groceries if they don't have enough to eat. Fill their tank in their vehicle if they even have a vehicle, which a lot of them don't. Help them in a way that they can help themselves. That's what we need to start doing. And that's really big work for us. And we need to become familiar with affordable treatment. Now, there's a lot more openness. There's a lot more openness about treatment now. There's a program on TV I see all the time, or an ad for Landmark, and it sounds like a wonderful program. But most addicts don't have insurance. Hello, they may not have jobs. They may be sleeping in a gutter, or under a newspaper, or under a park bench. These are not people with resources, but they need help and they deserve help. So we have to find where these resources are. The Healing Place is one such place in Louisville, Kentucky. It was started some 30 years ago. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's healingplace.org. I took my son there on Christmas Eve in 2010. I got him out of the Breckinridge County Detention Center. They said, if you will deliver him and carry a $10,000 bond till he arrives, he can be released if he will get in their program. And that's what I did. I rode from Bowling Green to Breckinridge County to Louisville and then back to Bowling Green on Christmas Eve. He spent 9 months in the program, and then he entered as a mentor to others, and then he was on the staff. He was on the staff until he could no longer afford it because he couldn't support himself with what they paid. And he eventually left, and, well, down the road, more relapses. The average number of relapses for addicts is 6 to 7. That's pretty shattering. When you first go through it, you think, oh boy, we're going to get this. Well, that gets down to expectations. We have to stop with the expectations because we don't know anything down the road. All we can do is the next right thing, and for ourselves and for our loved one. There is something called Casey's Law that is a legal step we can take. You can have a court order drawn up that your son or daughter or loved one, whatever, must enter a treatment program or they will go to jail. That's the choice. And I've seen people do that. And I've seen people not do it who I wished could have done it. But it is a tool that's available. That's a harsh tool, but we're dealing with harsh stuff here. And life and death. I have here, get over niceness. We think sometimes you just don't feel nice, okay? Just be quiet, okay? Start being quiet. That's real good. Don't have to be nice. Just be quiet. Accepting what lost is loss. Oh my. Relationships with parents, with children. My son's daughter's mother would not allow her to see him to see her for 7 years because her father was an alcoholic and died of it. And she did not want her daughter to go back and forth. She said, when you get it together, we'll get together. And that happened. It did happen in my home in Louisville. I was living there. He hadn't seen her for 7 years. And then we got together, we visited a while, and then he took everybody to the state fair, and we had the best day. And he's got a wonderful relationship with his daughter. She's 22 now. How did that happen? The difference between codependence and enabling, I've already touched on that. We have to understand our role in it because we are part of the problem. We are not helping by trying to make things less bad. Sometimes they have to get good and bad. And the little term for that is get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Go for it. And sometimes that works. But we have to know when we're being actively addicted to the addict. That's what our codependence is. We are addicted to the addict. So that brings us down to, but we don't always do well with our addiction, okay, any more than they do. Recovery is not a straight line. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's a process, and we can't beat ourselves up when we fall short, and we can't beat them up when they fall short. A relapse is a relapse. Accept it, keep moving. That's me. That's the addict. We all got to keep moving. Concentrate on our recovery, my recovery. Celebrate my steps that are good. Don't beat myself up for the ones that I didn't do well. Try to do better. And finally, and this is what I would change. If I was writing this book today, I have developed a working relationship with a higher power of your understanding. Now, you will hear about this in the Al-Anon and Nar-Anon meetings. They're based on it. I was the one of little faith. I did not trust enough that it was going to be okay. For years, I just thought, how can this be right? Where's my son? How am I going to get him back? Well, here's the thing. We never get our addict back the way they were before they became addicted. They are changed forever. We are changed forever because of what we've gone through. Didn't ask for it, but we got it. But there's so much that was learned along the way, the people met along the way. I wouldn't take anything for what I've learned and for those things. Sign my son up or daughter or anybody for this? No, not ever. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but for some reason that was my path and it's his path, so we be walking that path. He's 48 now. He's had 8 years of recovery. He's great. I've got a whole lot of him back, most of him, and I just treasure all of it. And here's some more good news. This does happen. As soon as we begin, as the enabler codependent, to stop our ways of being part of the problem, the energy between us changes. The addict realizes the game has changed. It's over. You're not on the other end of the seesaw anymore. And sensing that causes them to stop. And that's when their recovery can begin, because they know Mom's not going to bail me out. Here I am. So this is where things shift. I've seen it happen. It's like osmosis. I don't know, but it happens. I've seen it over and over. And it's out there. But we have to do the work, and then they have to do the work. And we get there every day, one day at a time, one step at a time. So an attitude of gratitude, that's what we try to live by. Wow. Grab the good stuff. Let the other stuff go. So time-wise, got a little time here. I guess I'm about on time. I wanted to leave some moments for discussion. If anybody had questions or had anything they wanted to share about their experience with addiction in their community, any suggestions?
Yes, my son's mother was an addict. My son is an addict. I don't think of addict as being a pejorative term. I just think of it as a descriptive term. Mm-hmm. And what you said about Al-Anon is spot on. If any of you might have some kind of dynamic going on with an addict that is causing negative things in your life, Al-Anon, I tell you, it was a life changer.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, since we're in church, I'd like to hear more about how you dealt with the higher power issue. I think that's and also I would just love to I want to thank you for the courage to talk about this stuff. It's really, really helpful.
Well, I'm not unique, I can tell you that. That higher power question is very good, because when this book came out, one of my friends who reviewed it, actually, she's one of the reviewers, was critical of it in that she didn't see enough of that in here. And that when I wrote this, I didn't have it. I talk about the importance of it, blah, 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 but it wasn't coming out of me because I didn't have it. So one thing that helped me enormously, I came here from Louisville. I went to the Highlands Baptist Church in Louisville, which has a Friday night service. We call it Friday Church. It is attended by addicts from different programs in Louisville. It's very diverse, a very diverse group. They can get their papers signed that they're at a meeting when they come to Friday church. I was led into that by my son, who went before I did, and I actually joined the church up there. Who'd have thought? Like, what? Really? And I was there on their ministry group and chair of that and whatever. But that Friday service, helping me along with my own faith in something bigger than me, I don't consider I'm not a traditional Christian. I was raised in the Christian church. I don't feel that now. I totally respect it. And I'm not here to talk about my religion, but that church, that group helped start to build my faith back in something, an undernet, higher power. And that's where my work really started. And if I wrote it today, I'd have to write it differently. But I was fighting my way through some of the worst years when I was doing this. It was just like, And I think it shows. I'm not proud of that. But I don't know if that answered your question or addresses it. Does it at all?
Well, I guess what I think is that there's a lot of different ways to answer that question, and I really appreciate just hearing you share how you found a higher power.
There are a lot of ways. I didn't do it traditionally, but I found in a traditional place resources that I pulled on, and I'm still very in touch with all of them. And I'm here because of what I was able to build there. I wanted a spiritual community when I moved to Bowling Green 2 years ago. And so this is part of my journey, very much. Mm-hmm.
As far as other people that might be affected, I didn't hear you mention anything about Alateen. And maybe that's not part of your family story.
No,
but,
I should definitely have mentioned that. Yeah. Very important. Boy, and I have worked with that group a little bit in Louisville. Yes, teenagers, what they go through with this. I couldn't get my granddaughter to go to an Alateen meeting because I was in Louisville with her when she was still in high school, and her father was out by then. But he did about 4 years in the slammer. His father filed charges. He's got a couple of felonies on him from his father, which I think his father hoped he was doing the right thing. Some people are forced into treatment by going into incarceration. That should not be the case, but it is. Sorry. And so when he was able to be with his daughter, that made all the difference. Back to your question. What you said, Alateen. Yeah, I could not get her to go to a meeting. We had some very good groups there in Louisville. I don't know why. You can make it available. We don't indoctrinate, we lead, we show. And if they pick up, fine. And I think as grandma, yeah, this would be great for you. Yeah. Stop it. That's me pushing. I'm such a good pusher, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I don't know if that helps. The other thing I want to mention, and I did have it in my notes, somehow I blipped over it, siblings suffer uniquely with this. My daughter, who's older than her brother, dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and a lot of attention started going to her brother in crisis. This happens all the time in families. Somebody's feeling overlooked, left out, and it's not out of selfishness. It's just there's nothing coming their way, and boy, that's a tough one. And my daughter never complained, but I know she felt it. And the other thing is in blended families, when you have step parents, or father. My son, my second husband he was a sheriff. His mindset was of that more than anything, but he made great allowances where he could. But it was tough. It wasn't his kid. He still, in his heart of hearts, has this feeling that, well, I did it right. I got 3 kids. I don't have any of this. Well, I'm so glad you don't. But I'm not going to take credit for it, okay? But that's another big one. Thank you for bringing that up very much.
You hear a lot about so-called interventions. Is that a good way to get someone into treatment? A bad way? I mean, you said some people get incarcerated. If you're a family member and you see your loved one going through this, what can you do to send them in that direction?
Oh, well, I got a story for you. Oh, get my book. We tried 3. We did the first one, and it is always advisable to go with a counselor, a drug and alcohol abuse counselor, and we did. And it was somebody that my son knew. He liked him. This person had been an addict himself and got the credentials to do the work, and so we had all the family with the counselor, and it did not fly. My son was having some real problems with his stepmother, who was vocal in some ways that were not helpful, and yada yada. That's another story. But so my husband and I, his father, we were still married, I think. We tried it on our own twice. We thought, well, we can do this. We're his parents. We got this. We know him better than anybody. Oh, terrible, terrible. And he ended up leaving, because you have to give him a choice. You're supposed to give him a choice. Go get some treatment or out the door. He left right before Christmas, on Christmas Eve that year. I did not know where he was. He was out somewhere on some road with his saddlebag full of his stuff. That happens all the time. But it is the way to go. And it needs to be done well. I think always with a counselor present. We weren't smart enough to get it right. And it does work. It absolutely works. It didn't for us. I'm not going to say otherwise, but thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point. It's a tool.
Hello, thank you very much for sharing. It really meant a lot to me. I was wondering what your approach toward your son throughout his alcoholism was, and if that changed, and also your attitude toward him, like the expectations. Was there ever a point that you just gave up and said, well, I guess he's always going to be sick? Or did you always believe in him?
Great question. I love your questions. Y'all are bringing up the best things.
And what worked?
Yeah, well, I know who my son is inside. I made him. I helped raise him. I've always believed in that. I've never not believed in who he is. I've never not believed that he couldn't beat this. I didn't know how it was going to happen. But my response, I had my despair, but that's when I go to my meetings or call somebody. I was always there for him. He went to 3 different facilities, state, county, and federal, before it was over. And I'm here to tell you, LaGrange is the best. Woo! Oh, well, another story. They have horses there. He's a horseman. I was always there to visit him continually. I was the only one in the family who continually visited him. His daughter went with me twice. Bless her heart, she was a teenager. His father, I don't know whether it was guilt or what, he went twice in 4 years. He just couldn't do it. You can only do what you can do. But for me, I just had to go and be where he was, wherever he was, and I always did that. I I hated that he was there, but is what it is. And I remember the last time I saw him incarcerated, it was in Hardin County, and he said, "Mom, all I want is to have my autonomy back." Well, there's a big umbrella, and he's worked on. He's not 100%. I mean, he's not all solved and on his way. He's still got work he's got to be doing. And I worry about it. Why not a little more of this and a little less of that? But you know what? I can't do that. So there was more that you asked. I'm not sure I've hit all your points. I never stopped believing in him, ever. No. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel a little vulnerable exposing my ignorance, but in the context that I'm familiar with, there's a lot of, in the codependence enabling consideration, there's a lot of fear about suicide and how you navigate that.
Now you go to a meeting and you tell your Al-Anon or Nar-Anon folk what's going on, and they offer whatever. Their experience, strength, and hope is what we share in our meetings. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and live with it. And it's awful. I had a woman call me 2 weeks ago from Louisville. I hadn't heard from her in 3 years. She works at the Healing Place. She was an addict. Now her 19-year-old daughter is she thought she was going to die that night. I hadn't heard from her for 3 years, and she called me on the phone. "Barbara, this is going on," and we talked. You try to talk to somebody who can calm you down, because we're not going to affect it. But we have to work with our anxiety, and certainly can't project it onto them. It's not going to do them any good. So I don't have a pat answer. It's almost circumstantial. But I've had to live with it a couple of times when it was impossible. But okay, impossible's over here. Then I do the next right thing. Maybe I go swim laps or do yoga or go see a friend or eat some chocolate or whatever. Just make it better, whatever that takes. That's all I know. It's not very academic. None of this is.
I think we have time for maybe 2 more. That's okay.
I have actually 2 things. You mentioned Dr. Burns Brady, who headed the Kentucky Impaired Physicians Committee for about 40 years. Burns and I started medical school together.
Did you really? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
He became addicted to benzodrines in his 3rd year, trying to stay up studying, had to drop out for a year, came back and finished, and then spent his career helping. He did a lot of good for a lot of physicians.
Yes,
they
I
either
remember
got
reading
dry or they lost their license. Second is I have a daughter who married a young man who turned out to be alcoholic. Wonderful guy when he was sober, very abusive when he wasn't. She got him into Rivendell to try to get him dried out. His mother signed him out a few days later. She was a real enabler. And so my daughter divorced him.
Wow.
He died somewhere in his 40s, I assume, from alcoholism.
True story. God, just to be cold chilled, I'm so sorry. So much loss, so much loss. Waste. Thank you for sharing that.
I just had to tell you, your description of going to your first Al-Anon meeting, it's like, that was me. I was looking for the darkest, deepest, faraway corner of the room and stood outside for a long time before I went in that room. Yeah. And I listened for a few sessions, and I thought, I don't know if this is going to work. Fortunately, I had friends that were also going, and they said, just keep coming. And they do that in AA too.
Yeah.
Just keep,
Keep coming.
And you know what?
It
They
works
were
if
right.
you work it.
And I don't go to many meetings, but boy, the things I learned have carried me for years. So thank you for describing that feeling.
Well,
But first, was the worst, hardest.
It is, but somehow, I don't know why we kept going, but I guess it was, what else? My back was against the wall. That's all I knew. I didn't have anything else. So why not?
Hi, thank you very much, Barbara. These stories don't often end, or sometimes don't end the way we want. And I have a dear friend who recently lost her son, and she's the parent of her grandson.
Yeah.
And I'm the friend that listens to the stories. So my question is, are there groups for those, or does Al-Anon help people in that situation? She's suffering with a lot of guilt. As you mentioned, what if I had done? What did I miss?
And she's the grandparent.
She's the parent. This was a 42-year-old man that passed away.
Yeah.
And
She's the
she's
parent.
his mother. And she's taking care of this man's son now.
There are groups for grandparents, and that'd be something to Google. I know there was, they were starting that in Louisville when I was still there. And there are also specific grief groups there was through Narnon. We had a particular group for people who lost their loved one to addiction.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. They are out there. She needs to do some Googling and talk to people. There is help for that.
Okay.
And there's a real need for it. Oh, boy.
Definitely. So it's a tough road. She's strong, but it's a whole family dynamic, which you opened with.
I get it.
But thank you so much for
Tell her that it's out there and encourage her to look. She'll find it. They'll find her.
Thank you.
They will. Wow, what good questions. All of you. You made it so much better.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. And thank you to everyone that shared and asked questions and listening. As you can see, this community, we share our lives and we talk about the hard stuff. I'm going to ring the bell just for myself before we go on. Thank you for indulging me. This congregation and the work we do is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who contribute. The offering is a sacrament of the free church. Our greeters will now pass the collection plate. You may also use the QR code on the screen or donate via our website. As we enjoy the music, the offering will be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes. Now, this song may have come across your TikTok feed. It's by Auntie Gladys. And while Barbara gave us some tools and some empathy for what's going on, we need a little song in our heart, a little mantra to keep us going. So we came up with this song, Puff Up Your Chest.
I'm going to teach it to you because this is an audience participation thing. And we have the added benefit of this being an earworm that will follow you the rest of the day. Sing after me. Puff up your chest. Puff up your chest. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Is it loud in your mind? Just take your time. Is it loud in your mind? Just take your time. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Puff up your chest. Take
Now is the time for community. Oh, thank you for these gifts. We'll try to use them wisely. Now is the time for announcements. I'll go first. I want to thank everyone that helped out with our table at Pride yesterday. I think about 10 of us were involved with that, and it was a beautiful day and a great day of fellowship. We saw a lot of old friends. So if you look on our Facebook member page, you'll see some familiar faces. I think that's all the announcement we have. If you have questions about Unitarian Universalism or about joining this congregation, please speak to someone on our membership team or our president, John Downing. Raise your hand if you would. You may find out more about us, including community news, by reading our weekly email updates, looking at the bulletin board, or following us on Facebook. No what? No last hymn? Oh, okay. Okay. Little signs I did not know. I would like to thank again Barbara for sharing your thoughts today on this very important topic. As a part of our ongoing search for truth and meaning, we encourage thoughtful discourse. After the service, you're invited to join us for discussion in this room about 5 minutes after we close. In the interest of time, we will now just skip to our final reading.
So grateful to be here today. Thank you all. I'm going to share from my favorite part of the book, my Blue Jean book here. Throughout the chapters, I've saved a little, I call them an ism, a saying or something that is pertinent to that chapter. And a friend of mine said, why don't you have a backpack and put them in the backpack at the end of each chapter, so at the end of the book, the backpack's full of all these little things to remind yourself. So I'm just going to read a few of them. It is what it is. Where there's life, there is hope. Kiss. Keep it simple, sweetheart. Thought I was going to get you. We are more alike than we are different. Tell children they are not at fault. Thank you for your concern. You're entitled to your opinion. Walk a mile in my moccasins and we'll talk. You have no idea. They may be grown, but they're not grown up. Throw out shame and blame. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Cherish your precious self. There's a reason for everything and no reason. The only constant is change. Raise your gaze. We're not in charge. Develop an attitude of gratitude. Thank you.
We now bid farewell to those who have joined us online. We hope you found this service meaningful, and we invite you to join us again. Be well and go in peace.